Welcome to the Power of Your Mind podcast. I'm Victoria Gallagher, your host. Have you been attempting to use law of attraction or hypnosis to attract financial abundance, a soulmate, or career success? Would you like to be happy, motivated, and successful? Have better health, enjoy more fulfilling relationships, overcome struggle, and gain mastery over your life? Then join me on this amazing self-help podcast where you'll unleash the power of your mind. I'll be sharing 20 years of wisdom and techniques of hypnotherapy, law of attraction, visualization, meditation, personal growth, positive affirmations, and other effective methods to help you tap into the great power which resides in your mind and become the best version of yourself. Well, hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Power of Your Mind podcast. You're listening to episode number 110. I'm Victoria Gallagher, Law of Attraction hypnotist and #1 best-selling author of Practical Law of Attraction, Align Yourself with the Manifesting Conditions and Successfully Attract Your Desires. I'm also the founder of HipTalk.com and HypnoCloud apps, which gives you access to over 500 hypnosis recordings right in the palm of your hand. So be sure to download that from the Google Play App Store or Apple App Store. And so today I have a very special guest with me, Maggie Kelly. Maggie Kelly has been meditating for over 14 years. She's a meditation instructor trained under Deepak Chopra, owns a meditation and spiritual center in San Diego, and is a life, business, and spiritual coach. She combines coaching with meditation to help clients to get in touch with their inner selves. And so today, Maggie is going to share some of her insights on quieting the inner dialogue and reconnecting with your innermost self via a daily meditation practice. So welcome to the show, Maggie.
Thank you. And thank you for having me, Victoria.
Thank you for being here. And I'm glad to know that you have been meditating for over 14 years. It's such an amazing modality to really help, especially during today's times, with, really being present, really being in the moment, really being able to find gratitude and happiness and inner peace. And so, it's amazing. It's something that I believe we all should do. So I'm really glad that you're going to be explaining this to a lot of our listeners here on Power of Your Mind podcast.
Yeah, I would definitely wholeheartedly agree with you that these are the best times in the world to get started if you don't already have a practice.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I have definitely gotten myself back into it on a consistent basis. I've done it pretty much about the same amount of time, I would say, but it's about the consistency that is, I think really key. And that's something that, when all of this stuff that we're dealing with right now here in 2020, July 2020, this has really been unprecedented amounts of stress and anxiety on a lot of people. So I'm just really thankful that you're here to talk about this. So tell us a little bit about what was it that got you into meditation? How did you stumble upon this?
Desperation. Desperation. I have 2 kids and they're adults now, but when I had my second child, he's chronically ill, and it just kind of came out of nowhere for all of us. And I was kind of at a loss as to how to handle my life and his life expectancy and the fact that this is incurable, and I'm his mom, I'm supposed to know what to do. And, having a 3-year-old as well at the time, just, was feeling very much like I was hyperventilating through my life. And I didn't really like who I was becoming inside of that. You know, I was very quick to anger. I was very just over the top, anxious and worried all the time. And I knew that I couldn't keep that up. And that wasn't the mom I wanted to be, because I was being short-tempered and, you know, very reactive. And I had read some books written by Deepak Chopra for some time when I was in college, and I thankfully still had a few on the shelf and grabbed one day. I never even realized that Deepak at the time had a wellness center right here about 20 minutes from my home.
Oh my goodness.
And so I thought, well, what the heck, you know, what else can I do? You know, it was really like, where do I turn kind of moment for me. And everything that Deepak teaches begins with teaching you the practice of mantra-based meditation. And so that's where I was originally introduced to meditation, and I haven't looked back.
That's amazing. Well, good for you that you decided as a mom that you weren't going to tolerate, you weren't going to put up with being the worried, anxious, verbally, that you decided that you were going to take matters into your own hands and do it in a very constructive way. So good for you. And fortunate for you that you had a Deepak Chopra center right down the street. I love Deepak Chopra. I've been reading and listening to him for many, many years. And he just is... Yeah, I mean, just his demeanor is just so calming and peaceful. I mean, there's a few people that whenever I do need to get a little bit of audio support, he's definitely one of them.
Yeah, there's something about his voice that's very calming and soothing.
Exactly.
But none of us really need a Deepak in our lives. Of course, it's always great to have a teacher or guru or lama, depending on where you are in your Eastern traditions. But it's not necessary to do what I did and take as many years as I did to do all that kind of work. I mean, I think we can all, just from our living rooms or our bedrooms, find a quiet space and spend 10 minutes in stillness and really find an impact. Have an impact in our lives. And as you said before, it all hinges on that consistency.
Yes, exactly. So you mentioned that he teaches a mantra meditation. Mm-hmm. Just for our listeners who maybe don't yet have a meditation practice, can you share just a little bit what you might mean or how a person goes about doing a mantra meditation?
Sure. There are several different ways to meditate. And one app I would recommend to your audience that you download free of charge on the Apple Store is Insight Timer. Mm-hmm. And there are thousands and thousands of meditations you can sort of peruse and try out different things, different teachers, different modalities, see what lands best with you, because no one way is the way. I just happen to resonate with mantra because what the word mantra means vehicle for the mind. So it's literally designed to help you recognize when your mind strays from the present moment into either a distraction in the environment or some kind of internal dialogue that you have running. And in that moment of recognition, to bring yourself back to the present moment using the mantra, sort of as an anchor. Mm-hmm. Now, with my little pinball mind, that is really helpful. It's much easier for me when I have that kind of monkey mind, they call it, mm-hmm. to focus on a mantra to bring myself back to the present moment, as opposed to, say, maybe a meditation where it's just breath work, where when you notice your mind is straying, you bring yourself back to the breath. There's that too. Mm-hmm. Or, there's all kinds of meditations out there. But for me, I found that mantra meditation was really helpful to me, and I've just sort of stuck with it. And I'm a certified Chopra Center meditation instructor as well.
Great. I love Insight Timer. That's actually one of the first ever meditation apps that I downloaded. And it's so funny because they do have all the guided meditations and I just stick with the bell. But there's just something about the, just the silent meditation and being able. And so I resonate with mantra, as I did a mantra meditation for quite a while, but now, I kind of go back and forth between, sometimes it's a mantra and sometimes it's just my breath. But that's the great thing about meditation is there isn't any, like you said, one right way. Just do what that feels best for you. So what was one of the most poignant moments in your life, and how does that relate to the power of your mind?
Well, this actually just happened last summer. So this is after years of meditating, and maybe someone out there is much quicker learner than me, and it wouldn't take you this long. So first of all, remember that you're on your own journey, you're on your own path, and no amount of time that you spend down a spiritual journey ever goes to waste. And sometimes it happens slowly and sometimes it happens quickly. And a misnomer of most people who are probably listening to your show, they kind of believe that awakening or enlightenment is somehow this, epiphany out of nowhere. I'm awakened. And it doesn't happen like that for most people. I mean, maybe an Eckhart Tolle, yes, but for the most people, most people that I know, most spiritual leaders and teachers that I know do not have a story that says it happened overnight. So to remember that it's every single day is an opportunity to have a teacher appear in whatever form that is, some kind of a challenge or adversity or what have you. So keeping that in mind, and realizing that I've been meditating for about almost 15 years now, I went last summer on a Vipassana retreat. Now, Vipassana is, for those who don't know, is a very rigorous, very dedicated 10-day silent meditation retreat. So for 10 days, you don't speak to anybody. You don't even look anybody in the eye. You don't even, give them the high five sign or anything like that. You eat at regimented times and you meditate for 10 hours a day for 10 days. And I had heard about it. In fact, Deepak was the one who talked about it in some of his things. And I thought, I should at least try this. It's a different modality for me. It wouldn't hurt me to, try something different. And at about the 7th day of this total complete silence, I just kept hearing the word dad. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Why am I thinking about my father? Now, just as background, my father and I have never really had much of a relationship. And partly because my parents were divorced when I was young and I moved to Spain with my mother. I pretty much grew up in Spain with my mom, separated from the remainder of my family. And my mother met this man who ended up being just a horrendous alcoholic who was verbally abusive and definitely did not want me around, and made sure I knew that daily when I was living with them. And I was very young, 8, 9, 10, 11. And a lot of what I heard was, get lost, Maggie, get lost.
That's what you heard when you were growing up.
From my stepfather. Mm-hmm. And so right in that very formative time, I started adopting this mindset that I'm not wanted. I don't belong here. You really don't care. I'm kind of in the way. Those were the internal conversations, subliminally, certainly not consciously, at least not then, right? And at about 12 years old, I wrote my father a letter. My father was living in California at the time. And I asked him if I could please come back to California and live with him and leave Spain behind and this abusive situation. And I never heard anything back about that letter. So you could probably understand how that would then solidify the internal dialogue that you don't matter. Nobody really wants you around. You're not important. And so that's sort of how I grew into my young adolescence without that. And so ultimately I did return to the United States. I did live with my dad, and I ultimately went to high school and then off to college and all of that in the US. But I never, ever, ever talked to my father or my mother about that letter because I just took it on. So during this Vipassana retreat, fast forward 45 years, what's coming up for me in the stillness and the silence and the beauty of that space of reconnecting with your innermost self was Dad, Dad, Dad. So I come home from the retreat, and my father lives 5 minutes from here, from my home. And I see him maybe 3 times a year. That's how I have deliberately sort of removed myself from his life, thinking that, okay, I'll stay out of your way. So I decided when I got back, I don't know what this is all about, but I'm going to take him to lunch. So I take him to lunch, and I'm pretty sure he thought I was dying of cancer or something because we never connect. He's like, is everything okay, Maggie? Like, yeah, Dad, actually, I just wanted to ask you something. And I said, remember that letter I wrote to you from Spain when I was about 12? And he looks me in the eye and he goes, what letter? I never got any letter from you.
Oh my goodness.
So for 45 years, I had lived inside of a conversation that I either inherited or invented that wasn't true. Right. And because probably for several reasons, I was awfully young, to understand that really you just talk about it and you clear the air. You don't have to wait till you're 57, right? But that internal dialogue, that internal conversation drove my perception of and my sense of self my entire adult life. My choice in men, my lack of relationship with my father, my resentment towards my mother for not standing up to me, and ultimately an understanding of, we all do the best that we can according to whatever spiritual condition we're in, and they did too, right?
Right.
When you're 11, 12, 13, you're not thinking that.
No.
So that I would have to say is the most poignant thing that has happened to me to date as a result of my practice. And that's pretty incredible.
That's an incredible story. And it's amazing how we carry around these stories that we make up about things based on what happened or what didn't happen. And that can shape and filter our entire awareness and our entire how we behave, how we see life, how we are able to receive love. And so that's amazing. And I could definitely relate to a lot of what you're saying. And Vipassana, by the way, I've done that a couple of times at retreat, and it's amazing. I highly recommend any listener who is just on that path, on that journey to self-discovery that's I don't know if you can do it these days right now. But once.
No, but you can go online. I've been going online since the COVID meltdown. Daily meditation, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., an hour each.
Oh,
so
okay.
You can connect up through Dhamma.org and do that. I'm not
Okay.
sure if you've never meditated through using the Vipassana method. I'm not sure if you can do it, but if you are somebody like you who has experienced Vipassana, then you can connect. There's 350 people in my meditations at 7 a.m. and 7.
I love it. I love it. Well, and it's kind of cool too when you do the insight timer. That's just another way that you feel like you're connecting with all these other meditators in the world, because you see like, oh, I just meditated with, 3,500 people.
Yeah, and you got friends in Germany and all over the world. And yeah,
exactly. So do you think you would have ever had that, let's just call it sort of an awakening, even though it took place over a period of time, but do you think that you would have ever had that situation if you didn't have your meditation practice? If you find value in this personal growth related material, I strongly recommend that you sign up for your $1 trial to my Personal Growth Club. Just head on over to personalgrowthclub.com and get a whole month of premium Personal Growth Club video training materials, meditations. You also get 6 free hypnosis sessions that are valued at over $174, all for this trial of just $1. Even if you cancel, you can keep the 6 hypnosis sessions. That's my gift to you, and that's how confident I am that you are going to love Personal Growth Club. Go to personalgrowthclub.com and start your $1 1-month trial today.
Highly doubtful, because like I was telling you about how I was when my son was born, not only was I just always on edge and hyperventilating through my life, I was also righteous. And I was right and you were wrong. And that's the way it was. So I can't imagine being able to have the perspective to step back and say, maybe this isn't the way I've always thought it to be. Perhaps I should check that out. Yeah. And I may not have ever had the courage to talk to my dad, and, what's really more amazing is that the timing of this story couldn't be better, because that was last July, so a year ago. And in November of last year, he was diagnosed with incurable stage 4 liver cancer.
Oh my!
At this moment, he is passing away, as we speak.
Oh, that's so sad. Oh,
but it would have been a lot more sad had I never asked the question.
Yeah.
And that is where being able to, as you say, consistently and with dedication on a daily basis, sit in meditation and give that to yourself every day, that stillness, to reconnect with your innermost self, is the biggest gift you can give to yourself, for this reason and several others, right? Because I know that instead of being that reactive, crazy woman, I'm now responsive. And it may sound subtle, and it is, but it's huge. It's very profound to now be responsive as opposed to reactive.
I think that the most subtle things are the biggest things. I really do. The most subtle things have sometimes the biggest impact on our lives. They really do. So what would you...
If you're listening, right? If you're listening and if you're present, then you hear it or you see it or you question it. But if we're so busy living inside of the to-dos and I should be doing this and I have to be, on top of that and I have to complete this and I need to make more money and all of those things we think we're supposed to be doing, life will pass you right by and you won't have that moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's a really good point. Absolutely. And I just recently heard something from my internal guide that seems like the most subtle thing, but I believe it's going to actually have the biggest impact. And it was just making 2 lists. This is what I do. This is what everybody else does. But it's going to be the most impactful thing because it's going to allow me to focus on what I do and and everybody else focus on what they do.
Keep your own side of the street clean.
Yes, exactly. So what would you say was the biggest main lesson that you learned out of that, having that profound experience?
This is the most dangerous neighborhood you can be in alone.
And for our listeners, you're pointing to your mind.
Your mind, your brain, is the most dangerous place for you to dwell in alone. The most dangerous neighborhood. Because the example I just gave you, how many other examples do I have or anyone listening have of perceptions that we think are true that we've never really bothered to check out because we're right? And it is that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many of those are up there running around, running our lives, our relationships, perhaps our even job choices, or any of it, right? So that would, to me, would be one of the most profound lessons of meditation to begin with. And the key to meditation is recognizing when your mind strays from this moment, right here, this moment, and this moment, and this moment. And if you can start to recognize when your mind takes over and tries to tell you all this stuff and catch yourself in that very moment, then you have a choice. But otherwise, you're just kind of taken by the hook off into whatever place that your mind wants to take you. And most of us follow that train of thought to the end. We have conversations with ourselves all the time. Should I wear the green dress today? No, don't wear the green dress. It doesn't look that good. Wear the red dress. Should I do this? Oh, no, don't. We could keep ourselves company forever just listening to our own minds. But this is just not a healthy place to be.
It's so true.
So returning, the thing is that the silence is always there. We're the ones who leave. We're the ones who fill it up with TV or food or alcohol or chocolate cake or texting and scrolling or shopping or whatever. We all do that because we somehow think that happiness somehow exists out there. And if I just keep grasping and clinging, I might just get there. And we forget that the happiness is already inside you. It's just covered over by all that internal noise and distraction. So if we can get still and return ourselves, it isn't about getting to a place of stillness. It's about returning to that place that's always there.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's, for those of you who have never meditated in silence before, try it even for 1 minute and you will understand what we're talking about here, how many thoughts are vying for your attention. And you have to be able to get back to the silence within your mind. And that's how you gain, to me, that's how you gain control over your life. If you don't have control over your thoughts, which for the most part, most people do not have control over their thoughts, you will find out very quickly in about a minute how many thoughts
and
you're
Deepak
having.
Likes to remind us we have 70 to 80,000 thoughts in one day.
Mm-hmm.
And 95% of those thoughts are repeat thoughts. So in essence, we're perseverating and ruminating over the same thing all day long.
That's why we don't change.
That's right.
That's why we don't
And
change.
that's one thing, you know, when you ask me what was the most profound thing, I would say the other profound thing that changed for me in meditation is that I returned to my creative self, that the creative side of me woke up. Because when you're just operating on warp speed, doing, it's pretty hard to just sit and be creative and allow the creativity to flow. But when you start to get still again, creative juices start flowing. So that's one thing I noticed, is that my creative energy is really high now.
That's great. That's great. I love creative energy. And I love when people are tapped into and tuned into their creative energy, because I really believe that every single one of us has the ability to be, do, and have whatever we want. And we are creative by nature because we were created by a creator who created creative beings.
That's right. That's right. I had somebody tell me when I was pregnant with my first child, and I've never forgotten it. And she said, you know, you're your most creative right now, that when you're pregnant.
That's so true.
Ever be in your entire life. I was like, wow, okay. That is true.
Yes, that's very true.
We are creative all the time. If you think about it, you know, our lung cell lining turns over every 14 days. Our cells themselves are constantly regenerating. You know, everything about us is a constant state of change. Nothing about us is static. And it's, you know, one of the other things is meditation, at least for me, has returned me to nature. Because there's nothing more alive and moving and constantly changing than nature. There's nothing more beautiful than watching this barren tree all of a sudden get these little buds, and the buds turn into flowers, and maybe the flowers then turn into fruit. And pretty soon it's June and you've got plums raining from your orchard. And then it all starts again. Right. So
that's beautiful. Yeah. So what do you think keeps most of us stuck and unable to live a life that we envision for ourselves?
I would say, because I'm also a life coach and spiritual teacher, and a lot of clients are afraid to take the risk. I think we want to stay safe. So in this particular time, most of my clients are really, really anxious and very afraid. A lot of us have a very difficult time living in uncertainty. And we're holding on to our picture of how it's supposed to look. It's supposed to turn out a certain way. And if it doesn't, we lose ourselves, which is exactly what drove me to meditation to begin with. I had a child who was chronically ill with a short life expectancy, and it didn't fit my picture. And I went over the edge. And I didn't realize all I need to do is take a new picture. This isn't going to look the way I thought it was, so I'm going to have to create a different picture. So I think for what keeps some of us stuck is certainly fear. The fear of change. Being in a state like we are now of this uncertainty with COVID, and am I going to lose my job, or are the clients going to come back, or do we have food, or do I have to be in the food bank line, or anything like that, has us all in a state of panic. And then you add the racial tension going on and elections coming up, and people are very, very fragile right now. So I think part of it is to remember, and this is what I say a lot, it sounds easy, but it's not. It's to remember that nothing's permanent.
Yes.
Nothing is permanent. In the very same way that we just talked about that tree blooming and growing, that tree will die, right? In the very same way that the happiest day of my life was, you know, the day I got married, you know, maybe I'll have a happier day down the road, right? Who knows? So joy is not permanent. anger, violence, hatred, COVID are not permanent. So nothing, and we're not permanent. So that's the other thing. I think that a lot of us fear death. And we think that, we just got to do and be and have a certain number of things in order to be happy. And then all of a sudden we're 95 on our deathbed looking back saying, what did I do? I wish I had done it differently. A perfect example is this morning, I had a client, she's from Pakistan. And we were doing a Zoom coaching call this morning, and she was talking about, the expectation in her country and her culture for a woman and what they're supposed to do. And any deviation, you're shunned from your family. And yet she has this internal yearning to get out, to leave Pakistan, to live somewhere else and do something different and make her own money. She's in a place of that, standing on the cliff to make the choice, right? Do I follow my passion? Do I follow my dream? Do I listen to my intuition? Or do I stay small and I do it their way and I fit the mold and I don't rock the boat? So it does take courage. It does.
Absolutely.
Nothing worth doing isn't scary, right? There's that fine line between scared and excited. It's that where you get that funny feeling in your stomach. You're just like, and sometimes we just have to throw the hat over the wall and then figure out how we're going to go get it. And I'm not saying be irresponsible and throw caution to the wind, but literally there are times for courage. And sometimes, life is not long. And
it's so true.
I do not want to be one of those people on my deathbed looking back with regret. I just don't.
Well, and the thing is that most of the things, so if we're not thinking about the past failures or guilt or depression or sadness or, all of those things, then we're thinking about, what could go wrong in the future? What could this mean? What could this, this COVID situation turn into? What if this happens? What if that happens? And most of those things, you're spending your time living in a state of fear about things that more than likely are probably never going to happen. More than likely.
Yeah, or the things we make up, like I did, right?
Yes.
You live inside of this story you make up and you think it's real, right? And, all stress is unfulfilled expectations, whether it's from the past or from the future. And we as a society, especially Americans, but I think globally, live in a chronic state of stress. So that puts your entire physiology into a state of fight and flight on a regular basis for a long, long time. And most people don't realize that meditation is part of the yoga traditions. There are 8 limbs of yoga, and meditation happens to be the final 5. Limbs of those yoga, limbs of yoga. And the reason is that the word yoga means union, and that means union between your body, your mind, and your spirit. Sort of like a 3-legged stool. If one of those is not doing so hot, the whole stool is going to fall apart. So to bring you back into a state of homeostasis, meditation allows you, number one, to settle your physiology, to bring you down from that chronic state of fight, flight, and freeze that your amygdala is so good at perpetuating, right? Because one incidence of stress, like let's say someone cut you off on the freeway and you came this close to hitting them. So your entire adrenals and all your hormones are going, your heart rate, your blood pressure, maybe you're sweating, everything's elevated. It takes 5 hours for your physiology to settle down from that one incidence of stress.
Really? 5 hours? I never knew that.
Yeah. So let's put it in perspective. You got that way on to work. Then you get to work and you realize, oh my God, I forgot the presentation and all the materials I'm supposed to present today. So there you go. You got another one on top of the one you're still trying to come down from. And then you realize, the dog gets sick and they call you from the office and they tell you got to meet at the vet, and you quick, the dog's been poisoned, whatever. Right? So there's another one. So pretty soon your entire day builds one stress event on top of another stress event on top of another stress event. And then we wonder why we have anxiety, depression, heart attack, cancer, all kinds of autoimmune stuff, digestive issues. Because when you're under stress, your digestion slows because your body knows that I don't need to worry about digesting my lunch if I'm trying to get to live, and survive whatever I feel threatened by. So I have a lot of clients with a lot of physiological issues that are stress induced. So the number one place to start with meditation is to understand that we're bringing your physiology down to homeostasis. And then from there, you can hear your spirit speaking. From there, you can listen to your own intuition. And that internal dialogue is the dialogue you want to be listening to.
Hello, this is Victoria Gallagher. I hope you're enjoying listening to the Power of Your Mind podcast. As a way of thanking you for listening, I'd like to offer you a one-time discount of 35% off your first order at hiptalk.com. Just go to hiptalk.com and enter the code PODCAST in the discount code area in your cart, and you'll receive 35% off your first order. Thank you so much for listening to the Power of Your Mind podcast. Right. So you are getting your body, your mind, and your spirit all balanced and into alignment. That's a that's a beautiful way to understand it. And I never really thought about it that way. I never really realized. I knew it took I thought maybe half hour, an hour to come down from a stressful encounter, but I had no idea 5 hours. So it really stands to reason, especially now with everything that's been going on out there. I mean, people are just getting more and more things thrown at them. Hopefully the rest of this year just is nice and smooth and peaceful and successful, and we can get back into 2020 is going to be an amazing year.
Or we get to just write it off as, one of those. I mean, we can see things as a challenge or as adversity. Mm-hmm. Because those of us who are seeing this as adversity are going to fight it tooth and nail. I'm going out without a mask and I'm going to cough on you. Right? And those that see it as a challenge are like, okay, I can't do anything to control this. This is the beautiful, beautiful lesson COVID has brought us, in that we are not in charge. Mm-hmm. We're not in charge of any of it. Nobody can say when this is going to end. Nobody's going to say when there's going to be a vaccine. Nobody's going to tell us that the unemployment rate's going to drop by X date. And we have to be okay with that uncertainty. And
we're in charge of how we respond to it and how we choose to perceive it and how we choose to interact with it. And I believe our inner world ultimately does create our outer world. It's not going to create this disappearing, but it's going to create how we function in this environment.
Exactly. I mean, that was one of the biggest lessons I learned when I was going through this beginning pieces with Deepak Chopra and through meditation. Is that was the biggest epiphany then was, oh my God, I'm not in charge. I'm not in charge of this child. He's on loan to me anyway, right? I have him for as long as I have him. And God willing, it will be a lifetime, right? But if it's not, that's not up to me. All there is for me to do is what there is for me to do in this moment, right? Mm-hmm. And that's it. The rest isn't on me. And as crazy as that sounds, as simple as that sounds, I never got that before. It sort of hit me like a brick. And I actually started laughing when I got it. It was just like, oh my God, you dummy. You thought you were in control this whole time, right? So there's a certain freedom when you get to that space, when you realize, I don't have to run the world. I don't have to fix it all. I don't have to know all the answers. And then we can relax a little bit and sort of settle into what is.
Absolutely. So what is it that causes us to operate with all this stress and anxiety and fear? Like, why do so many people just automatically seem to fall into that way of being?
I love that you asked this question, because I do Maggie's Mindful Moments on YouTube every week. And this was the topic of this week. And it really is, I think, from my perspective, I believe that it has everything to do with that we think we are separate from one another. I think that my life is all that matters, my health, my well-being, my job, my title, my role. And you feel that same way. So if something happens to you, well, it's not happening to me, so I don't care. Right? We can see it unfolding in a very real sense globally right now with the racial disparities and with healthcare disparities and who's dying of COVID, far greater numbers than the rest of us, right? Because we think that if it's not happening to me, I'm not responsible or accountable. Well, if I throw garbage in the ocean and other people do, and we ultimately have no coral reefs and we change the ecosystem, that affects everyone. So we are not in a vacuum. We are not separate. And that is, one of my favorite teachers is Thich Nhat Hanh, Vietnamese Buddhist monk. And he coined the phrase inter-are. We inter-are. I cannot exist without you. You cannot exist without me. I am you. You are me. And when we get that really in our bones, why would I dare walk around and cough on you right now, or not wear a mask around you, or not be worried about how many people are in the food bank lines at the school down the street? How many people don't have a job? So for me, I think it is that. It's that we think we're separate. It's a very self-centered way of existence. And we have not been able to really put our arms around the idea that we inter-are, not just as human beings, but with nature as well, right? So if we were polluting, it matters to us. And if not me, then my children for sure, right? So for me, that's what I think is the biggest thing that drives it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I agree with that, we're all part of the whole. We're all we're individually responsible for our contribution to this whole, just like, our heart is responsible for beating and our lungs are responsible for breathing, but it's inhabiting the same body. And if the heart doesn't do its job or the lungs don't do its job, then the body ultimately does suffer. And so I believe it's the same way with each of us individual human beings. Exactly. So that makes sense.
Exactly. And you can see it on full display right now. Every day on the news, you can see it on full display. And I have a child, again, who's chronically ill. So this child has not left this house since March. And when we go anywhere, we've got N95 surgical masks because God forbid I get it and give it to him. But we're walking around and all we see is people without masks because that's your problem, lady.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's really interesting how... And we won't get into, too much of that, but it's interesting, all the various different perspectives that there are out there on how and what, how people are supposed to be and who's got the right answers. And, and it's, the ego, that.
Well, and what does really freedom mean? Because if you're out there
Mm-hmm.
fighting for your freedom, what does that really mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you think, okay, I'm not going to wear a mask because that's my freedom you're taking from me. Really? Okay. I mean, I'm willing to listen. But like you said, we don't need to get into that. But
right.
Yeah, the bigger issue is we think we're separate. Like it's them and us. And it doesn't help that our leadership just perpetuates that notion on a daily basis. We don't have a leader that's out there saying we are all one. We need more Dalai Lama. We need more, and it's his birthday today. It's his 85th birthday, the Dalai Lama.
Oh, happy birthday, Dalai Lama.
Yeah, we need more Dalai Lamas and Thich Nhat Hanhs out there talking, a couple more Martin Luthers, a couple of those real giants in the world who are all about peace and coexistence, and we are.
I love it. So what does meditation have to do with all of this?
Well, it's interesting because I just finished my graduate certification in contemplative psychotherapy. And really...
Congratulations.
Yeah, really what that did was what I was already doing, but wanted to deepen, which is include meditation in my coaching practice.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we can get still, we can hear the dad, 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 or the, wow, did that really happen? Or I made that mean something. Maybe I should check that out. Mm-hmm. And when we don't still our minds, we're still living inside of this dangerous neighborhood that we were talking about before. And so meditation, first of all, I have people meditate when they arrive. So we're moving from the crazy environment we're coming from onto this gorgeous property and sitting still and meditating and bringing our physiology down. Then we can actually have a vulnerable, open conversation that really is meaningful, where there's more, I think, more profound thought going into it, maybe more insight that doesn't come from me. Because we all know the answer, as Deepak would say, whenever we asked a question, he would say, you don't need to ask that question. The answer is inside you. It is.
It's very true. Yeah. And then you're getting a full participation where somebody's participating with their whole self and not just their surface top of their mind, but they're participating in their coaching. And really, I mean, coaching is just drawing out the person's resources. And so you're using meditation to really enhance the ability of somebody to be able to access more of who they are. And so I love that. I think that's wonderful. I think so many, everybody does have their own answers, but sometimes it's difficult for people to get in touch with their own answers. And it can be like pulling hair, to try to get somebody to get in touch with their own answers. So meditation is a wonderful way to give somebody access.
Yeah, primarily we're starting with slowing down the nervous system, the central nervous system and the vagus nervous system. And the vagus nervous system crosses right here in your neck. So that is the point between body and mind, right? Mm-hmm. So if we can stimulate the vagus nerve, slow it down and get it to relax a little, then we have a chance of reconnecting the body with the mind in a much more productive way. Because most of the time, like you said, it's difficult for people to really go inward and get introspective because we're so busy worrying about all the stuff we have up here in our minds that's driving the show.
Right. So what are some of the types of clients that you typically work with, and what kinds of problems do they usually come to you, or solutions are they looking for?
A lot are just kind of like what you were saying, the ones that are stuck, feeling
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know what to do or what decision I should make, whether it's to get a new job, to move across the country, to get married, get divorced, have children, whatever it is. There's
Mm-hmm.
also that subset of people who are sort of in that transition space of, like I am, I'm going to be an empty nester in about 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that group. Or I have a gentleman who's one of my clients, who's a very successful businessman who doesn't want to do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to do something different. And he has no idea how to reinvent himself or even how to look for it.
Yeah.
So I have that type of client too. So, and then I also have a great deal of people under some kind of stress-induced health problem.
Yeah.
Cancer, breast cancer, autoimmune disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety, depression, a lot of that, right? So, there's just the gamut. And I used to think it was mostly women, but now it's all of a sudden there's a lot of men coming through, which I love that. I love that. That's really nice to see too.
Yeah, it seems that men are starting, in this last decade, it seems men are really starting more to come around to, where it seemed like, doing kind of self-help or getting in touch with yourself, is a little bit of a feminine type of thing, but it's for everyone. It really is something that we all need to do.
Well, it's about being able to connect with your vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Because really, most of the time we're playing roles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, I am playing the role of a guest on a podcast. You're playing the role of the host. In an hour, I'm going to play the role of a cook and make dinner. I'm going to play the role tomorrow of a dog walker. They're all little roles that we play throughout our day and our life. But a lot of us believe that we are our roles. We have identified so distinctly with the roles that we perform that we've forgotten that's not who we really are. It's just like I'm an actor on stage for this amount of time. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to do this. But some of us get really caught up in our identification with the role.
Yes. That makes a lot of sense. As a matter of fact, I mean, I can identify with that a lot because, I'm very identified with the role that I play in, being an entrepreneur, and it's kind of always there, and so sometimes it can be difficult to switch over and transition into the role of just being a wife or being the cat mom or being, what other roles that I, being a friend, being the daughter, being all those other roles. So yeah, it's interesting.
And to recognize that who you are is not the role that you play. That's not who you are. It's just a role. Just like you are not your thoughts.
Right.
You're simply the thinker of your thoughts.
Right. Our behavior. We're not our behaviors.
You're just the one thinking the thoughts. So to become a witness to the thoughts is the key to meditation, right? When you notice that you've gone off and you witness yourself straying off from the present moment, you become a witness to the thoughts and you realize you are not the thoughts any more than you are the role.
Right. Well, and that's why I don't believe that there's anyone that's inherently bad or good. It's people get very attached to playing a particular role that they're playing, but they're not the thought, they're not the behavior, they're a spiritual being that's living in that role in that moment and thinking the thoughts role thinks and feeling the feelings that that role feels and doing and acting, behaving in the ways that they were all acting out.
And one of the things I notice with a lot of clients is we really lack self-compassion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're very, very hard on ourselves. We judge ourselves so harshly and so critically. A lot of times I have to tell my clients, just put the bat away. Put the bat away. Leave it in the closet. It doesn't belong here. Because we're all doing the very best that we can in this moment, according to whatever spiritual condition we arrive in. And that's just perfect. There's no other place to be. There's no place to go. There's nothing to do. There's certainly nothing to fix because there's nothing wrong. Just dwell in where you are in this moment. In this moment is a great starting point. It's a perfect starting point. My clients laugh at me when I say, it's Tuesday at 4:00. You could start Tuesday over right now. You want to start Tuesday over right now? Let's do that. People just look at me sideways. Like, what do you mean? I can't start over till tomorrow. Who said? Right? That's another one of those limiting beliefs that we have bought, the hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, you could get more out of this next hour by choosing that you're going to start now than maybe you might get out of an entire day.
That's right. And that it's okay. And whatever mistakes you may have made, you made them because they're part of your growth and part of your experience and part of what has you develop spiritually, emotionally, all of it.
That's great. Well, I think that this is a wonderful place to land with this podcast today. So you have a call to action for our listeners today. And so you're offering a 60-minute complimentary coaching session on Zoom. I think that is so generous. What can a person expect by getting together with you during that hour?
Well, as you sign up, there's a list of questions, like where do you want to be? What things do you want to pursue in the next 3 to 6 months? What's stopping you from pursuing those things? How will you feel if you don't? How will your life look differently if you do? Those kinds of things just gives me a starting point so that we're not coming in cold together. And then I just sort of spend the next hour on the Zoom call, just sort of, like you said earlier, sort of extracting what's really underneath the lack of mobility in what you say you really want to create for yourself.
That sounds wonderful. That sounds wonderful. Well, I hope some of our listeners will give you a call. And so they can find you to do that. They can find you on your website, maggiekelly.com. That's MAGGIE Kelly, KELLY.com.
And there's a link for you to just click to sign up for the complimentary coaching session right there.
Wonderful. And then you also have a YouTube channel where you dialogue a lot about meditation and coaching and give some tips and techniques and strategies for living a more peaceful life.
All of that. Yes. I have my YouTube channels of the same name, Maggie Kelly, or Satsang House, which is my meditation center in San Diego. And the word satsang means a community of like-minded people joined together in search of the truth. And that's a Sanskrit word, and it's spelled SATSANG. So Satsang House. And you can also find me on YouTube there.
Wonderful. Well, this has been very enlightening, and I am sure that it's been very enlightening for our listeners. I love meditation, and I think it's just as important as eating a healthy diet and exercise and the air that we breathe and getting plenty of sleep and water, we need to meditate. And so this has been very, very important for our listeners to learn about this. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Victoria. It was a pleasure.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with your friends. And once again, be sure to subscribe to the Power of Your Mind podcast if not already. We can be found as Hip Talk on all our social media accounts. So like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, subscribe on YouTube, and sign up for your free self-hypnosis video training course at hiptalk.com. Be sure to subscribe to the Power of Your Mind podcast, and you'll be instantly notified the moment the next podcast becomes available. Also, please be sure to leave a rating and a review to tell us how you're enjoying these episodes, and that way you're making a contribution toward others getting to share in this valuable information. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon. You've been listening to the Power of Your Mind podcast, brought to you by HipTalk.com, Personal Growth Club, and HypnoCloud apps available at iTunes.